Hi, I'm Joe, and today I am doing my August wrap-up. The month of August, I read a lot of library books, and I had to return them, so there are not going to be very many books in this video. I read 11 books in August, and half of a book of short stories by Dorothy Parker. I did not finish it before I had to return it to the library. I really enjoyed them. A lot of the stories reminded me of Amy Adams' character in Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day. She's very breathy and just funny, overly dramatic, and I just love that movie. And a lot of the stories in that book reminded me, I could just picture Amy Adams' character in that movie being the girl in these short stories by Dorothy Parker. I read Northanger Abbey by Val McDermid. That is a retelling of Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey. It's a part of the Austen Project, and I really enjoyed that. They modernized it. The characters had iPhones and Twitter and Facebook. Another book in the Austen Project that I really enjoyed was Sense and Sensibility by Joanna Trollope. That was a modern retelling of Sense and Sensibility. And I also enjoyed that these authors would put in some of Jane Austen's works, especially in Northanger Abbey, a definite huge step above Jane Austen fan fiction. These authors are already established. They have their own careers, their own best-selling books. They are not trying to make a career out of Jane Austen's characters, and I'm very, very critical of anything using Jane Austen's characters or retellings of her stories. So I was greatly impressed. So if you like Jane Austen, or maybe if the Jane Austen books kind of intimidate you, I suggest reading these books in the Austen Project and then read the Jane Austen books. I don't think these books are a substitute for reading Jane. I think that they may help people have a better sense or idea of exactly what's happening in Jane Austen's books, because they're a bit wordy and just the culture and norms are different, obviously, today than they were then. So I think that these books kind of help with that, but they are definitely not a replacement for reading the original Jane Austen books. Next book, The Book of Unknown Americans by Cristina Henriquez. I loved that book. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I did a review on that book, so check that out. It was amazing. Book of Jonah by Joshua Max Feldman. Did not care for that. That was a retelling of the Book of Jonah, and it wasn't bad. The author really enjoys using dashes to the point of distraction. I would be reading a sentence and then there would be a couple dashes and then all of this information and then the end of the dash and the rest of the sentence. And I had no idea what the original sentence was about. I have to go back and reread the sentence without the part between dashes. It was just odd, and I guess that must be his writing style, because it was prevalent throughout the book. And are dashes the new parenthesis? I don't understand. It just kind of felt unfinished or not deep enough. It just kind of felt like he didn't go into the characters far enough. I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. The next book I read was Liliane's Balcony, a novella of Falling Water by Kelcey Parker. This Falling Water is a house that was built by Frank Lloyd Wright, and it is about Liliane Kaufman, who lived in the house. This is from Amazon. It is an inventive novella hybrid, a mix of prose and poetry, past and present, heartbreak and humor. At the core is Liliane Kaufman, the wife and first cousin of the philandering Edgar Kaufman, who commissioned architect Frank Lloyd Wright to create the audacious Falling Water, a Pennsylvania house built over a waterfall. Rippling out of the couple is a cast of characters spanning centuries. Without introduction or background, a different voice narrates each chapter as the iconic home itself becomes a central character. Interspersing fiction and fact, although fact outweighs fiction in this well-researched story, Parker reveals the tragic life of strong, intelligent Liliane, who is slowly eroded by a complicated marriage gone toxic. Adding dimension to her portrayal are three other women, all at different points of self-discovery, all potentially bound for a similar fate as Liliane. Not unlike Falling Water's structure, which masterfully balances the man-made with the natural, Parker sculpts and controls myriad nearly unwieldy elements to construct a driven plot that illuminates the perched house and those who live within it. It was extremely interesting. I enjoyed that one, and it's a novella. It was short and it was easy to read, and I recommend that book. Also, it was greatly researched. The author actually has volunteered at Falling Water and given tours and whatnot. My Wish List by Gregory Delacourt. This was a story about a woman who has a notions shop, and the two women in the shop next door are hairdressers, they're sisters, and they often buy lottery tickets, and they have her buy a lottery ticket. So she buys the lottery ticket, and of course she wins, because we would have no story if she lost. So she wins the lottery, and she doesn't tell anyone, and she hides the winning lottery ticket. The main character debates whether she is going to cash in the lottery ticket, how it would change her life, what she would do with it, and at the beginning her list is stuff like a new bath mat or a new robe, very simple things, and then there's some more of her story, and then her next list is a little bit more extravagant and a little bit more extravagant. But between the lists is what actually happens, and it's a story about love and betrayal and loss, and it was just a really good book, and I greatly enjoyed that. I have this book, Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding. I read this years and years ago when it came out, and I found it at the Goodwill and wanted to read it again. It is a sort of retelling of Pride and Prejudice. Bridget is a neurotic 30-something. I think we all know what Bridget Jones's Diary is about. There's the movie, and I just love this book. It's hilarious, and I want to be Bridget's friend. Oh, then there's Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King, which, if you watched any of my other videos, you know my thoughts and feelings on that book. And I did a review, so I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I am over that book. I am done. In the Woods by Tana French. I loved this book. I heard about it from amylauren on her channel. I will link to her below, and it was amazing. I love this book. I did a review on it. Check it out. I mean, even if you don't watch the review, just read the book. It's that good. It was just, I loved it. The Crane Wife by Patrick Ness. I wanted to read something by Patrick Ness because I hear his name all over BookTube all the time. I don't even know how to describe this book. There's a man in his, I think he's in his 50s or 60s, and he hears this noise in his backyard late at night, and he goes out in his yard, and there's this huge crane, and it has an arrow through its wing, like an old-fashioned arrow through its wing, and he helps it. And then the next day, this lady comes into his printing shop, and he had made a paper crane, and she saw it, and she had these paper cuttings that she made, and she put the crane with hers, and it made this wonderful picture that like people cried when they saw it, and they end up making some pictures together, and they sell for astronomical prices. And I don't know, it's like a Japanese fairy tale interspersed in this book. I was preoccupied with the series of cards that she was making, which Patrick Ness says is not the story of the Crane Wife. So I was preoccupied with trying to figure out the story that the lady was making that she was not showing anyone. And I think that just distracted me from the whole book. When You Are Engulfed in Flames by David Sedaris. I heard about David Sedaris on BookTube, and wanted to read something of his. So I found this. It is a collection of short stories. I believe all of his books are just short stories, and they are hilarious. Very funny, like literally laughing out loud. Yeah, this book then led me to pick up Me Talk Pretty One Day, which is in my August book haul and has sort of a gross story around it. So check that out. This month was very library book heavy. September, I think I've banned myself from the library because I have so many books of my own that I need and want to read. I will save the library books for another time. So those are all the books that I read in August. If you've read any of those books, I would love to hear what you have to say about them. And let me know what your favorite book that you read in August was. And I will talk to you later. Bye.